Pea puffers. Little freshwater puffer fish that only get to about an inch long and can be inquisitive and intelligent, cute and curious, at times brutal and can bicker with each other. They can be fascinating and ferocious. A little more about that later. Sometimes called Indian dwarf puffer on account of where they're from and what they are. I've also heard them occasionally referred to as, as murder beans. They'll live for about 4 to 5 years and they prefer a pH of about 6.5 to 8. I find the ideal temperature zone is 24 to 26 degrees Celsius. Since they're so small, they don't need the biggest tank in the world. Obviously, the biggest tank we can give any fish is always better. I've heard an estimation that 5 gallons for your first pea puffer, and then another 3 gallons for every puffer after that, as a rough guide. I think you can keep a trio of these in a fluval flex, maybe 4 or 5 in the bigger flex. We work with what we've got, hey? So if it is a smaller tank, because these are tinier fish, you can get by. But in that instance, I would definitely recommend changing the tank up as often as you can. They are intelligent fish that like to explore their surroundings. That's one of the reasons I really like plants like this guppy grass here. It grows so quickly. The vista is always changing, especially when you rip a load out, and moving a few ornaments about every now and again will change it up for them. They'll appreciate a dark spot, maybe behind that bit of wood there that you see, or a wee cave for them to chill out in when they want. But definitely a heavily planted tank is recommended for these guys. If you can provide some moss, they will spawn in it. Although if you want the babies to develop, you probably need to remove the adults. I find they do explore all levels of the tank, although the substrate doesn't really matter. They're not going to dig about in the bottom now or root around in your... Well, I've had gravel and sand and both has been fine. They will prefer dimmer lighting and the cover that floating plants provide. And they are expert manoeuvrers. They're like the helicopter compared to the jet airplane. But they are small fish with small fins, so lower flow rates is going to be better. You don't really want to be blowing them around with a lot of current. That would stress them out and tire them out, and we don't really want to be doing that. I'm just going to point out at this stage, some of this video is going to involve these guys eating live snails. If that's not something that you're dead happy to see, this is maybe not the video for you, or possibly even the fish for you, so fair warning. Okay, so they are a territorial fish and the males do tend to fight every now and then. So if you're wanting to keep a group of them, and I would recommend a group of them, you're probably better off with one male and a few females, although that can be difficult to sort out. The males tend to develop a stronger line along the body and a deeper yellow belly, but it's hard to tell that until they've matured, really. So it can be difficult to sort that out in a store and identify which is which. A lot of people keep them in species only setups. I have seen them in community tanks. It's one of those things, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. From my experience, I'll tell you, I have kept otosynchronous catfish with them, no problem at all. I have kept neon blue gobies with them, sparkling gouramis. I've kept Armano shrimp with them, and they don't seem to bother the Armano shrimp at all. Cherry shrimp, well, adult cherry shrimp are fine. I'm sure that they predate on the babies, but they don't seem to bother the adults at all. I've also kept them with smaller rasbora. There is a group of chili rasbora in this tank, and it just goes perfectly well. I did try to keep them with scarlet baddis. I did read that they occur naturally in the wild together, but I'll tell you, it did not end well. As a very general rule, any fish that is too small to eat your puffer, quick enough to get out of its way, and enjoys the same sort of water conditions is possibly worth a try. I feel like trying to keep them with a betta is probably a bad idea. And the likes of guppies with those long flowing tails and fins that look a bit nippable. It's probably not going to work out either. Some of the smaller tetra will probably be okay right enough, but that's something I haven't tried myself. So what do we feed them then? Pea puffers are carnivorous fish, right? Meat eaters. So as you can see, they love ram's horn snails. The likes of bladder snails and pond snails will also be a tasty treat. A lot of people like myself have a separate tank just for raising snails to feed to the pea puffers, although you don't need a tank. A large tote box with a heater and a filter, or even a bucket, is enough to grow some snails out for these guys. They are fantastic snail predators as well. As I mentioned before, their maneuverability means that they can get the best angle to attack the flesh. You'll often see them hovering around a snail, waiting for the perfect opportunity for a peck or a bite. Sometimes they suck the whole snail out of the shell. Like most fish, we shouldn't only offer one food type though. They love bloodworms. We can buy them live or frozen. I should mention, in fact, though, with any carnivore fish, there is a risk of parasites. So it's maybe a good idea to deworm the tank I deworm the tank every month. There's plenty of good deworming medications on the market now, and it's pretty straightforward. You just kind of add it to the water, and it prevents anything nasty finding its way into, or well, eliminating anything nasty that finds its way into our fish's gut. Back to the food though, I don't see them eating dried food of any kind, to be honest with you. A lot of people say baby brine shrimp, but mine have never bothered. Anytime I've tried, they just didn't seem to know what to do with them. Grindelworms, they accept grindelworms, no problem at all. Alternative things you can try are your other live and frozen foods like your Daphnia and your Cyclops, but I definitely feel like snails and bloodworms are the main thing they're going to want to eat. And of course, they will be snacking on baby shrimp if you keep them in a tank, and other microorganisms that will grow naturally. Part of what makes them such good hunters is their maneuverability that we mentioned before, and also the gorgeous eyes that move independently, so they can focus on more than one thing at once. They have excellent eyesight. They can definitely see outside of the tank. I have read that they have facial recognition, so get to know you. But honestly, I wonder, is it just a case of they get to know whoever feeds them the most, or even whoever's most likely to feed them at any given moment? One concern you might have is, if you know anything about puffers, some of them you have to trim the teeth every now and then, and that can be a daunting prospect. But with these pea puffers, that's not anything you need to worry about. For some reason, the teeth in these pea puffers don't overgrow their mouths like other puffers do. So what you're left with? A remarkable, intelligent, interesting and fascinating little fish that, if you are prepared to keep them right, is a must try for any hobbyist. I've never met anyone that's kept them that hasn't appreciated every single minute of enjoying these fascinating, wonderful little fish.